This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Frank Smith of Matchroom Boxing. Frank, you're squinting your eyes there. Is my light a bit too bright?
It's a very dark room and a very bright light. So, no, good to be here, mate. Good to have you here.
I appreciate you once again inviting me out. It's good to be here. Andrade-Williams, a brilliant fight. One which has probably not received the recognition it deserves. Is that something you could get on board with?
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's a great fight and actually a real tough fight. I think Liam Williams, you see him here, he's up for it, he's game. He's coming for the win. He's waited a long time to get his shot. Andrade, I think Andrade comes under a lot of pressure because he hasn't really had those massive fights. But he wants the massive fights. He wants the biggest names. But it's a great fight and a big fight for the middleweight division. And, we're going to see an interesting one come Saturday night.
Is there a pressure on Demetrius to not only win but to look good doing so on Saturday night, knowing that I spoke to him earlier and he was very persistent on Gennady Golovkin. He wants him next. I know Charlo has been spoken about on numerous occasions as well. But is there a pressure on him to look good on Saturday night?
I think there's a massive pressure. We've seen him in his last few fights where he's gone out, he's put people down in the first few rounds and then sort of boxed his way through. But I think here he needs to really perform. But like I say, it's a tough test. Liam Williams isn't just a mandatory challenger coming here just to sort of lay down and get his payday. He believes he can win. He believes he can go back with that world title. So, yeah, it is a tough fight for Demetrius because, as you say there, he's calling out the big names. He's calling out the likes of Golovkin, the likes of Charlo. He wants all those big fights. He wanted Saunders. He wants Canelo. He wants them all. So he needs a big performance on Saturday night, and then hopefully we can make those big fights. They're the ones we want to work on.
When the fight was first announced, I remember Demetrius saying, he could win and he could look spectacular doing so, but he wouldn't receive the recognition that he'd probably deserve for it, because certainly over here, this is where his fan base is, where the majority of his fan base is, but everyone back in the UK knows just how difficult of a proposition Liam Williams will be for Demetrius. Do you think he will get the right credit if he does look good on Saturday night, if he was to be successful?
Yeah, I think so, because Liam Williams isn't an easy, like I say, it's not just some easy mandatory pushover job that he's got a tough test, and I think the fans appreciate that. And I think true boxing fans appreciate that. Maybe Liam Williams isn't as well known in the US as someone else he could have fought, but I think boxing fans know the challenge that Liam Williams brings.
He raised obviously the point, as we touched on there, the Golovkin, the Charlos and what have you, and he said it just all comes down to money with all of them. But I'll kind of raise the point to him and I'll put it to you yourself as well. We obviously saw Triller come into the fight business and really invested a lot of money, offered nearly or pretty much double what you guys did for that Lopez-Kambosos fight, really kind of getting behind the sport. With kind of their entry into it and them showing their intentions, does that put more pressure onto yourselves, the Zone, Sky, whoever, to invest even more to try to remain as competitive as possible?
Yeah, look, I think competition's great for the sport. Investment in the sport is great. It means that the sport is growing. The numbers that Triller, like I bandied about for the Kambosos Lopez fight, it's great for the fighters. Don't get me wrong, that is brilliant for the fight, and they deserve to make as much money as possible. I don't think it's sustainable over a long period of time at that level, because the money just isn't there to do that, plus all the costs of the show, plus the undercard. It doesn't make financial sense at that level. The bid we made was a higher competitive bid within what a traditional boxing market was or is. So, look, great that they're in the sport. Great that new competition's coming into the sport. Great that investment's coming in. And I think we're putting on some great nights. The biggest nights of boxing we've seen in a long time. So, we're here, we're fighting, and Triller's probably like we were 2 years ago in the US. They have to come in and make a statement and make a play, and they have to go like they bid double what we bid. That's either madness or in their head sensible. Like they could have bid $1 million, and the fighters still would have been getting very well $1 million more. Than us. The fighters would have still been getting well paid. But like I say, not to put them down at all. Great for the sport, great for the boxers, and that's what matters.
When you have somebody like Triller come in and they invest so much money, are there any concerns at all that fighters start to believe that they should be earning not just more than what they currently do, but significantly more than what you guys may be used to giving them with regards to their fight purses, and effectively making it maybe a bit more challenging to ensure the right fights are made?
I think these are very one-off fights. Like Triller have done, that was their real first big push into actual what I call real boxing, in terms of away from maybe the stuff they started off with, which was like Tyson coming back, etc. So that was their first push. Look, if they stay around for 10 years doing it, then that changes the market, doesn't it? I highly doubt they'll be able to pay those sort of numbers over a period of time, because you can't sustain a business plan that makes sense. And ultimately, the business has to make sense, otherwise none of us will be here.
They have Jake Paul, Benn on Saturday night as well. Will you be tuning in, Frank? I know it's after the show here in Miami.
No, I won't. But nothing. We've obviously worked with Jake Paul when he fought Anderson Gibb. But interesting fight. But I think Jake Paul's actually not bad. I don't think he's too. I don't know what you think, but I think Jake Paul, when it comes to, I think he's actually done all right, and he seems to be putting a lot into it. I won't be tuning in, but good luck to him.
I think use your words carefully around Jake Paul and the YouTube boxing scene with regards to the hardcore boxing fans who will watch this interview, is the best way to put it, Frank.
Yeah, I think ultimately he's coming in from a different angle. He's bringing a new fan base into the sport. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You don't have to watch him. You don't have to watch Triller. You don't have to watch the fight on Saturday. It's up to you, isn't it? And if you don't like it, I sort of think don't watch it. But ultimately, if he brings new eyeballs into the sport of boxing, it's good for everyone who's involved in boxing. So even for current boxers.
Just on the topic of kind of YouTube boxing, Frank, where do you actually see that going? Because I remember on the back of the Jake Paul and Anderson Gibb fight, there was talk about the KSI Jake Paul fight, but effectively after that, everybody thought that would probably be the end of it. Do you still see that happening in the future, or do you think because of COVID and the restrictions, it's probably put it on the back burner?
I don't know. My thought always was that if someone was to come into the sport and take it seriously, train proper camps in and actually try and make a career out of it, I don't see a problem with that. Because what difference is it to you or I after a period of time going, actually, I want to be a boxer. Might not be any good at it, but that's what I want to do. And they seem to get hated because they go in at such a high level with so many eyeballs on them, and there's such pandemonium around it all. But that's because they've built a brand, and they're now bringing it into the sport. I don't know. Is there a long-term market for YouTubers v YouTubers? I don't know. But I also don't think that's our business, like as boxing promoters. I think if there is someone who wants to invest their time and actually give it a proper go, and they can box, then yeah, I'm all up for it. I can't see the problem with it.
As we mentioned, their shows after yours. Decision, I think, is it 5 or half 5 for the main event? I remember seeing it announced earlier on for Andrade-Williams. Is that an easy one to come to? Or is it easy to kind of arrange to cater for the British fans?
Yeah, look, I think DAZN are obviously interested in looking at across the board at all markets now. And when they've got a European fighter involved, they'll put it on a time zone that makes sense. They're doing it with other shows as well. Liam Williams, it was always a big point for them. They wanted to make sure they delivered to all their subscribers. You got a decent time in the US and a great time in the UK. So yeah, that was something they pushed very heavily for, and you'll see a lot more moving forward.
Instead of moving forward, Frank, we'll move backwards. This past weekend, Benn with a stunning victory against Sammy Vargas. Just to reflect on that for me, Frank.
Yeah, really good performance. He just seems to impress more and more each time, and I think he's got a huge career ahead of him. He's a great character, great fighter, great story. Everyone knows the story, and I think he sort of got on with it. He had so much pressure, didn't he, coming through because of who he was, that when he was learning, I think when did he start out? At 19 years old? You forget how young he was. And I think he's had those learning fights now, and now he really wants to step on. He wants the biggest fights, and you have to respect him for that. And he looks so improved. Tony Sims has done a great job with him and has so much belief in him now as well. So that's great to see, and I think, like I say, he's got a massive future and huge star in our stable.
we saw him call out Amir Khan, and not just after the fight, but before it as well. We've seen over social media some people may be suggesting need to slow down a bit. I spoke to Tony Sims, and he said before the fight, if Conor could deliver the type of performance he did, he'd put him right up there with anyone in the welterweight division. In your eyes, what is next, Frank? Is an Amir Khan fight realistic, or do you still have to maybe look at, is there anybody else on the domestic scene, like a Michael McKinson at all, who I saw mentioned again, or do you see somebody else out there?
I think the key is for him is carry on developing, carry on growing. He's still young. He's 24 now, I think. He's still got so much time. I know he doesn't want to be in past 30, but so much time. I can't see Amir Khan taking the fight, because the truth is, Conor bet to Amir Khan really, I think, just wants that one last big night. He wants to fight Kell Brook, and I just don't see him taking it at this point. I think, Conor, like I say, we've still got time with maybe the European title could be next. There's an opportunity there as well. There's a lot of good fights for him, but there is a big gulf, I think, between this level and then stepping up to that world title level, where he still needs, that experience over 10, 12 rounds, even 12 rounds. He got one round on, that was his first 12 rounder, got one round on Saturday night. I think there is still no rush. But he's going to carry on stepping up, but gradually.
Just on the European title front, I spoke to Carl Greaves the day after, and he was kind of surprised that David Avanesyan's name wasn't pushed a bit more in the aftermath of Conor's win. Do you think that is more of a realistic fight? Do you think we could see Conor versus David?
I think we're talking, I spoke to Neil Marsh the other day about David. We're looking for some big fights for David Avanesyan, because he's at a stage of his career where he can step on and, he's highly ranked with all the governing bodies, where we really want to get him the biggest fight possible. Conor, like I say, has still win those titles. He's still got time to build his way through. I think that the time for David now is to get the biggest fights possible right now. So I don't see that fight happening next, but I see David Avanesyan getting a big fight next against a big name.
Can you give us any more on that? Because I remember seeing Carl Greaves' tweet, I think it might have been yesterday or a few days ago, that he had some good news from Matchroom. Can you give us any more?
He had good news from Matchroom. Look, we're working towards a couple of options out here this week as well. So we should have news on that soon. But we're pushing hard for David to get him a massive fight. That's what he wants.
Savannah Marshall with a routine win with her late standing opponent. After that, again, all the talk about Clarissa Shields. But Frank, Clarissa's moved into MMA. I saw it was announced earlier she's going to move into that for her first bout. Just kind of your thoughts on that, and how much of a surprise was it at all to yourselves?
I've only just seen it now, and when you mentioned it to me before, I don't know too much about it, like too many details. I saw it's on that PFL, isn't it? Something different, isn't it? She's keeping active. I don't know, when did she fight? In June, July, was it?
June, I believe.
Yeah, so keeping active. But the key for us is to try and make that Savannah Marshall fight. We believe Savannah Marshall does a job on her, but massive fight for boxing.
And moving forwards, obviously, big heavyweight talk as always. Frank, AJ Fury on the names, on the lips of everybody across the world. Really, different stories coming out all the time. Where do things currently stand compared to what we knew a few days ago?
Same as a few days ago. It's all being worked on. I don't really like putting time frames on it, because it puts you on the clock for. People to say, well, you said it would be done by here. Everyone's working to the same direction. You've seen a lot of positivity from Tyson Fury. AJ has always been positive to the fact he wants the Tyson Fury fight. And the work is being put in on the back end now to get through all the details that need to be dealt with.
A lot of kind of rumours coming out that Saudi seems to be the front runner, but I saw earlier today that both Eddie and Tyson Fury posted a picture of the Allegiant Stadium, yes, in Vegas, on their stories simultaneously. Is that me reading too much into it?
The Vegas is also an option we're looking at now. The governor has announced 100% from, I think, July 1st onwards. Could you imagine a huge fight in Vegas with 70,000 people there? But there is a number of options we're looking at, and we're getting very close to where it's going to end up. So let's see. But the aim, again, is to make the biggest fight in world boxing, and we feel very confident that will happen.
Now, I just want to touch on Frank Warren's comments. I saw him did an interview with TalkSport. He said one of kind of, I don't know if to call it an obstacle or not, but one issue to overcome is Rob McCracken will be away with Team GB, committing to the amateur setup over the course of the Olympics during the summer. How much of an issue will that be?
I don't know what the exact time periods are of that. I think we need to get some concrete details on dates, which will be heavily led by the site we decide, and then that will then feed into conversations from there. But yeah, no further conversations on that end about what you mentioned about McCracken. I'm not sure where. It's just something maybe Frank has decided to come up with now.
2.5 million pay-per-view boys is what he's kind of estimated, I assume, as a minimum. Do you think that's along the lines of what you guys believe yourselves?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest fight, not just in world boxing right now, but definitely in British boxing, isn't it? You've seen the numbers Anthony has done before in his fights, and this fight, being honest, is 2-3 times the size. So I definitely think that the numbers being talked about in terms of pay-per-view numbers are achievable. And can you imagine what the build-up's going to be like? We might even get Warren and Eddie and Aram all rolling around on the floor at a press conference.
Frank, we will leave it there now, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure I'll catch up with you again later this week. Appreciate your time. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social. Thanks
for having me, and thanks for being here as always. You got I think you and Andy from IFL got a lucky draw of the trips to America, didn't you? So you got a busy period coming up.
I'm just happy to be here, Frank, as always. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.